Thank you, sir.
Welcome, everybody. I want to introduce my guest speaker. Right behind you over there is Alex Edelman. Hello, CEO of LighterTech, a company that won the Rice Business Plan competition in 2022. One of only two non-US companies that has ever won the Rice competition in its 26-year history. So thank you, Alex, for being here. Today, we're going to go, the next 8 lectures will drill much deeper into the broad sort of overarching concepts we talked about last time. So today we'll talk about the idea, because the lecture is from idea to impact, and also the steps to go from idea to the eventual exit at a very top level. So we're going from the very top to this level, and then the next few lectures will start to drill down even deeper into how do you validate a customer, how do you interview a customer, how do you go from all of the 9 largest steps we're going to talk about. So just not working. No, we're doing it manually. Even that's not working. I can't advance my own computer.
So you have to click on the presentation and settings so it doesn't.
Yeah, there we
Oh,
go.
there we go. Oh, the figure should work.
Okay, thank you, Mr. PPT expert. So remember what we talked about, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. One of the reasons I like to call Silicon Valley the greatest business experiment that succeeded in the history of our planet, because it was the perfect trifecta. It was the coming together of talent, academic research, which you all represent, and money, all at once at one place in one spot, with just an overabundance of all of that back in the 50s. And then to that, I add my 3 F's. Remember what the 3 F's are? Friends, family, and fools. So that's how you get started, right? Usually you get some friends and family and a bunch of people who don't know any better, the fools, to help you start. And I broadly divide entrepreneurship into 3 areas: technical one, which is all of what you represent, social entrepreneurship, and corporate entrepreneurship, or otherwise called intrapreneurship. And there is going to be a section further down the road where we'll talk about intrapreneurship, use a case study out of Shell, how Shell TechWorks has been so successful in being an intrapreneurship vehicle for startups that don't want to take the risk of making payroll. So in this lecture, we're going to understand what entrepreneurship means for research context, deep tech. Also, your potential as a founder, your aha moment. And I'd like to ask you all, when we get to that point, what was your aha moment that made you start the iron and steel carbon capture, or the ethylene, or the cement, or the power supply, or whatever, whoever else is missing here? And explore the cycle of the startup, from idea to impact. Let's remember the funding cycle. 9 out of 10 companies don't really make it out of the valley of death. Hopefully you all will much have a higher percentage. And you need financing, the 3 F's at the start, angels in the middle, venture capitalists after you have validated your business model. They don't really risk money the way they used to back in the 50s. And then from then on, once you get to be successful, then people will follow themselves to give you money. So this is the funding cycle, and we just talked about the fact that entrepreneurs are those who take risk, those who create value, for which people will pay. And then we also want to look at the difference between academic value creation, which is what you guys do in your PhDs, and market-based value creation, which is what somebody like me who didn't get a PhD was able to do, lucky enough to do. Revisit my favorite little cartoon about the life of an entrepreneur. Every heartbeat, you're euphoric one instant when you get the big order, like he just got last week, Oh, and the next week, you see you don't have enough money to make payroll, and that's terror induced. So that is the life of the entrepreneur, and if that is not what you can handle, then you're better off being an intrapreneur. So you have to look deep within yourself to find out, do I have that appetite for risk? Do I have the tolerance, and do I actually enjoy it? Without that, it'd be very hard to sustain this kind of euphoria or terror, like the heartbeat cycle. And remember, we talked about Ashokism. So what are the ones that are relevant for today's talk? They're all revolving around ideas. So one is my favorite is don't push the river, let it flow. Because ideas emerge when you're really not thinking about ideas, when you're really in just following the river. Or you're meeting a co-founder when you make the turn down the river. Or you are suddenly, you have that aha moment. Final act of preparing to act is to quit preparing and act. So you can plan and plan and plan and think about what you're going to do, but in the end, you've got to do. And finally, learn from your mistakes. As you start your entrepreneur startup life cycle, you're going to make mistakes. Keep track of them. As I mentioned the last time, I used to keep track of them on a piece of paper. The top 10. And the tragedy is that that list would change because I would make a mistake that would bump number 10 off the list and enter the list somewhere higher. But keep track of your mistakes. Everybody will remind you of your successes. But your mistakes is something that you really need to keep track of because ideas, not all ideas succeed. And you are all going from research to start. How many of you here truly intend to form your own company once you're out of PhD? Samantha, American, some. You're not sure. You would rather go work for.
I mean, I'm not a PhD, I'm their MBA advisor.
You're the MBA advisor, right? The, okay, the power supply.
But I plan on taking all of their research and all their hard work and making lots of money from it, so.
That's a true entrepreneur.
It wasn't the power supply, man.
Oh, what?
Well, actually, yes, at the moment there are skeptics because there are a lot of stakeholders. We are doing our research to the full of our capacity and there are PIs. So it's their discretion whether we would like to continue or not. So maybe.
Why is it up to them and not you?
Because they are the one who fund us, actually, they are funding us, our research. They are the ones who take grants from different stakeholders like National Science Foundation. So we have our own capacity to give an insight, but they are the one who have to
Please,
take.
we need to listen.
But they are the one who have to take the decision, but we are pretty sure, we are pretty confident that we will have a partnership in the future and we may foresee a company in the future.
Okay, so you are not dubious about building your own company because of your own appetite for risk, but you are concerned about structural impediments?
That's correct.
Okay, well, there's gotta be ways to break through that. I mean, if you really have the desire, you'll break it. So you're trying to make commercial solutions, identify pain points. That's a very important thing. We'll talk a lot about identifying pain points. Because are you an idea looking for a problem solved, or are you actually meeting somebody's requirements, some market niche, some. So it all starts with the idea. What is ideation? It has to be that aha moment, combining insights, observations, watching the market, the needs in the market, and your own capabilities. You know, your idea may be to go to the moon, but you don't have the capabilities to go to the moon. So it has to be constrained by all of this. And again, it must solve a problem. Even if the problem is not known to your potential audience, but you understand through the research you're doing that there is a problem, then you have a shot. The sources of idea are from many. You could be frustrated. And I'll give you examples. I mean, Airbnb is a classic example of an idea that turned into a multi-billion-dollar company out of frustration. The founders not being able to find places to sleep under a conference. Accidents, happy accidents, research, technical challenges, and regulatory changes. For instance, you know, AT&T broke up, created a whole different set of opportunities for telecom providers, such as myself. electricity. I was very involved in the deregulation of electricity. And it created huge opportunities for so many people. Other, like the CHIPS Act that was passed 2 years ago has created opportunities. So there's all kinds of places, and then also universities have to be open enough to tech aspect. To allow students to do research, like the impediments you're facing, and take it out and make them into companies and take it to the market. So let's look at the startup life cycle. There's 9 stages to it, from idea to exit, from idea to impact. First is the idea. You've got to have an idea. Then you have to validate the idea. That you do through customer validation, customer discovery, customer interviews. Then you got to develop the product. Once you say, okay, this is an idea, this is a product that's going to work, or the product doesn't have to be a physical product. Software could be music. Recruit, add staff, add co-founders that help you build whatever it is you're building. Then produce what everybody calls the MVP, minimum viable product. Something that you don't take to the market, but you use, learn, test, and relearn. Then you have to figure out, you manufacture it, you outsource it, you license it, you have someone else make it. Get into the market, scale. Scaling is not growing. There's a little difference between growing and scaling, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, yes, this is, in my mind, the 9 stages of startup life cycle from idea to impact. Now, these slides will be available, so Ravi, we're gonna make sure everybody gets them.
Yeah.
So they don't have to spend a lot of time head down taking notes. Just take notes about aha moments. So as I said, 9 stages: ideation, idea, moment to exit. It all starts with the idea. We've talked about this. Every great business starts with an idea, but most fail because they're not great businesses, so they don't turn into great businesses. So today, I want to take you on a journey about the life cycle of a startup. Take us from the first spark in your mind. And let me ask all of you, what sparked your desire to do recovery of carbon from iron and steel? What was that? Say, this is a problem, I need to solve it, I'm gonna figure out how to solve it.
It's a combination of things.
Yeah,
It's a very
I'm gonna ask everyone.
Yeah,
I want this one to be very interactive, if you don't mind.
yeah, it's a very hot topic in industry right now. A lot of industries have pledged net zero by 2050, which means they're pouring a lot of money into that. And as a result, we got very high grants to our projects for carbon capture. And then we realized that our material would be a very good fit for that.
Yeah, but what made you say, it's me, I'm the guy who's gonna do this? You know, there's several others who could have gotten grants. That's the question I'm trying to drill into. There comes a point of, aha, I figured this out.
There is a niche in the market.
Yes. Now, what was your aha moment? What was your idea spark? You seem to be ready to answer, Samantha.
I think for us, it was opposite. DJ and I come from the business school, and I started a business when I was a teenager, and I always, wanted to have a business. And I've been itching for an idea to start a business, and for us, we knew that we wanted to start something. And then the idea of the technology print center is up to us. We're the inventors ourselves, so we saw there's an opportunity. I want to go after it. For us, it was a little bit.
Okay, great.
After.
That is classic, how a lot of good companies start, just like an Airbnb that we talked about. Hassan and Sagesh.
I guess last time we have mentioned in a single word what we call serendipity.
Yes,
Because ethylene has a big market, everyone knows, so we have been exploring alternative means of producing ethylene. So we started working with something we call catalytic chemistry, which involves a catalyst that drives the reaction. While conducting the experiments, we found that why do we need a catalyst? Let's just run the reaction in absence of catalyst and see what happens. And what we found was really promising. And then the idea came along with, why don't we use a concept that since we have changed the chemistry, it is now releasing the energy instead of requiring it. So can we make a process that can utilize the energy liberated during the reaction to drive it forward? without having the need to continuously supply the energy thereafter once the reactions are started. And that's how the.
Well, that's classic, that's, you already described the first three steps of the 9 that I talked
Yeah.
about.
And it happened.
Yes,
Can I ask you a question?
sure.
Did you have like a second, may I ask?
I hear you, sure, sure.
Did you guys have like a moment where you were sitting around and like watching TV and you went, and pardon my language, I call it the holy shit moment. Like, oh my God. You had that or was it more stretched out? Well, maybe a bunch of it.
More stressed about it, because it came all of a sudden, we got to go through a lot of research experimentation before we made the conclusion that this is the aha moment where we should proceed.
I understood about 80% of your presentation, which was probably about all I'm gonna get. But that was my curiosity. I was like, wow. That. I know a little bit about it, but I was like, okay, that's, so. Yeah, I mean, to me, that would have been like. Thank you.
Great, well, you're all thinking of fun, because sometimes you may also take up a research project because you want that DR in front of your name.
We just lost audio.
Add us?
Yep, you're back.
Yeah, okay. So the first stage is idea, and as I said, there are 5 general areas that sort of trigger the idea. Yours fits into number 3, that's not the observation and the analysis and repeat observation. You know, you see a market, a new technology, that's what sparked new possibilities. Why me? Why now? And the idea can be too wild, it's not a problem. Chase it. And if you fail fast, we'll start again. So on the idea stage, we had curiosity, frustration, and observation, and I give you examples, I won't read them all out, but Einstein was through curiosity, he was curious about how light behaved, and he came up with his theory of relativity. Google, Sergey Brin and Larry Page were really curious about how to rank various websites in search. When you get to frustration, Airbnb is my favorite example of building a multi-billion-dollar company out of a moment of sheer frustration where they couldn't find beds in San Francisco. They said, okay, why don't we rent air mattresses out? And that's how Airbnb started. Dropbox, the same way. Drew Houston from MIT lost his flash drive and decided, hey, I need a place to where I can store all this stuff and not be at the mercy of losing my flash drive. Observation, you know, to me, we talk about entrepreneur. The classic entrepreneur is Art Fry from 3M, who invented the Post-it note. And he did it by observing that there was this other kind of adhesive that wasn't very sticky, but it would be perfect to put on a screen or in pages without being so tight that it would tear the surface off when you try to take it off. And the same thing with Uber. You know, he observed that, hey, if I can actually locate a car and share the right scare camp, founder of Uber. Then we look at the other 2 areas, which is happy accident and technology shifts. Alexander Fleming saved the world with a happy accident. He went on vacation to the south of France. He left a petri dish outside, the mold, and it was by the window, and the mold just turned into this antibiotic that killed all of the viruses in the petri dish, whereas everything else that was in the refrigerator, the viruses were still alive and ready to do their bad stuff. Happy accident. Same with, how was the microwave oven invented? Somebody was experimenting with radio waves and melted the chocolate bar in their pocket. Barry Spencer, the inventor of the microwave oven. Technology shifts. You know, even think about Zoom that we're on. It's the shift of technology that is allowing, and of course, the happy accident of COVID happening where everybody was forced to go remote that made Zoom what it is. So we can go on and on, but these are all places where ideas begin, and each of you began in a different way. Yours clearly was an observation. Yours was Happy accident? Happy accident. Yours,
Gap in the market.
gap in the market. So here's I keep an idea journal, but for you, it's really not necessary. You guys are all on your path with your ideas, and you've got to take it to the next step. You can think of about, sometimes I ask an audience, what is annoying you? Like the guy who at Airbnb, who was annoyed by the fact that he couldn't find a place to rent. So if something's annoying you, maybe make that into an idea that works. But once you have the idea, you've got to validate that there's a customer for it. So learn, recycle, build, measure, learn. Will they pay for it? How much will they pay for it? And not always will you get the right answer. You've got to triangulate the answer. Did you all do that? Did you go out to potential customers and say, do you really need this? Are you going to pay for it?
Yes.
You did. Pardon?
What we're doing for EMS organization, that's actually, we are in the frustration stage, because we still.
EMS,
Yeah, EMS organization.
emergency medical services?
It's a medical device.
Yes, oh, you guys are the medical device?
Yes.
Yes, got
Gotta
it,
check. Yeah. Betty.
yeah. Again, Dropbox, he went out with an MVP, sought out all kinds of feedback from a bunch of people, they all loved it. And voila, we had a $1 billion company came out of making sure you validated his customer. So, I mean, my point is, do at least 50 customer interviews. Get feedback. Look for patterns in the problems that the people are describing. And make sure you get an answer for, tell me the last time you faced this problem from the potential customer. Because many people will like to pontificate about the fact that they're experts in this problem, but they don't know when they last faced the problem. Once you've got your idea, once you've validated that it solves a problem, that it's not an idea just looking for something to solve, you got to develop the product. And the product development is something that you all know how to do, and you build. The only advice I can give is build it in small, testable increments. Don't go for the full idea from the start. Keep getting the feedback. This is the lean startup principle. Agile, lean development methods to stay flexible with product. Where are you all in your product itself? How far are you? Are you past product development? Are you at MVP? Where are you all?
Development, I guess.
You're in product development? You're in this stage?
We have proof of concept and the preliminary model, but we need to demonstrate on a pilot scale, big scale for customers to attract.
You?
We also have a prototype, but we also need to test it on a bigger scale.
Okay, so you're beyond product development. You have a prototype already.
We need to build our first prototype.
Okay, so you're in stage 3. You're probably in stage 4. You're the superconductor guy, right?
Yeah, it's we have a prototype for a manufacturing build for Mark.
Okay. So,
I have a question. Now, most of these students have struggled with customer validation. We
Right.
talked about that's the step 2 or
Yes.
stage 2. And you elaborate a little bit based on the fact that we saw sort of research ideas. They don't even know who the customer is.
best guy who answered is sitting over there.
Yeah.
Over there. Wait, there. Sorry. Instead of me answering it, he's building a very successful company. 4 PhD students out of university. And you please ask him the question again, because he wasn't paying attention.
Alex, you've been there, all these students are doing research and they've come up with an idea and then so forth. So the question becomes, how do they validate this with a customer? Because many times they don't have it hooked up fully and they don't know who the customer could be. They have some general ideas. Any suggestions on that? How do you go further on that one?
If you can't get a customer, I would say try to speak to some experts that like you and let them estimate whether they think the customer will do it. Probably the easiest step. That's what
Yeah,
we
but
also did.
You talked to Intel, you talked to Infineon, you talked to Trumpf.
But I think the first discussion is very, very difficult to get these guys if you don't know them already. I mean, you only get them if you know the network anyway, but we did talked to some consultants and experts that kind of were friendly towards us and that maybe our professors knew whatever, and asked them what they think about this. And then kind of, that was kind of the first step into it. And then if you can get customers, by all means, like talk to customers and try to get at least an LOI. I mean, it doesn't cost them anything, just a little bit of time and one signature.
No,
from
we're
a big
talking
guy.
about feedback, about whether they needed
Yeah.
your product long before LOI stage, so that you could start developing it. That's
Yeah.
Dr. Radha's question.
You know, like for example, this one, he says ethylene. I'm gonna make a new way of making ethylene.
Mhm.
So he just talks to a few experts. They poo-poo on him, saying this is absolutely impossible. You can't do this. And then now, well, I'm being honest about this. And then then you have some side discussions. They have an aha moment. Oh, that's how you're tackling this. So it takes, so I'm just trying to figure out, how should they be rather than be disappointed?
Mhm.
How do they break through these to get further and further?
It's really tough because we also had discussions where people were like, it's impossible, this is not a problem, you're not solving a problem, there is no problem. But then eventually you find somebody that's, I mean, and eventually you have to stop. If everybody tells you that it's not a good idea, then you have to stop, right? But there is no clear answer to this. It's like 50 shades of gray, right? Like nobody knows what is right and what is wrong. So that's why you need to talk to a few people. But every entrepreneur needs to learn to make a judgment call at some point, and this is basically where it starts. Like,
Yeah.
it's very difficult.
You had a question?
One of the things that I used to do, and I was an army guy forever, so I was used to work for the soldiers a lot. In the army, we do the same thing all the time, every day, like, oh, we're gonna go blah, blah, blah. And so what I would do is I would go to a younger soldier or somebody and say, hey, here's a problem. What do you think, if you were gonna do this, if you were in charge, how would you do it? And I let them identify the problem, and a lot of times they'll skip right to the solution. So for me, it was always find people who are kind of it's kind of, I say it's almost anti-diversity, because you almost have to kind of, people who see the world kind of the same way you do to start, because they're gonna see the problem. Or they're gonna see, and you say, look, I'm not looking for the solution. Skip ahead to the perfect one where you get there. And for me, about 8 times out of 10, they'll be like, oh yeah, we need a thing that does this. They'd be like, thank you very much, have a nice day. They're like, that was my validation.
That's one slant at it. Let's have, you're a med tech, because I was going to give a med tech example also. Go ahead. How did you go about customer validation?
So I'm the Italy MD, the microgrid control software. So I think the tech people tell me from the problem, they talk with some engineers about it.
Okay, well, let me say that there is a medical company I'm involved with very much that has invented a cap that you can put on the head of a person and detect stroke. In the ambulance, at the home, at the shopping center, and it's got 12 electrodes and it looks at the brainwave mismatch and it will tell you whether you got a stroke or not, whether you got epilepsy or not, because right now it's the 4th largest killer in the US and the #1 cause for cost in the medical healthcare system is stroke. But what did we do? What did they do before they started actually inventing and developing the cap and the device and all the algorithms? Is they talked to ambulance companies. They talked to emergency rooms, they talked to ER doctors, they talked to the EMT techs, and developed data that said, yeah, that's a great idea. It's a lifesaver, but it needs to do this, this, and this. It needs to be easy to put on in an ambulance where it's bumping. It needs to give me a reading in less than 5 minutes. Now they're 90 seconds and they're telling you. So all of this was through repeated interviews, to your point. And so most of the companies have done that, even though they didn't realize they did that. I'm sure you did a lot more than you have said you did. In the superconductor area, did you do a lot of customer discovery?
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated where there's only like a dozen customers right now, but their specifications of what they need are so clear cut that they were able to send that to us and say, can you meet these numbers? Can you get to where we want to be?
But how did you come up with the idea that would solve that problem that these 12 customers told you you were going to solve?
That was really just curiosity in the labs.
So you were the one in the category called curiosity, right? Versus frustration, observation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So did that answer your question, Dr. Raja?
Yeah, but I will again ask you. Market is a little different than, common examples that we read. Yours is an industrial market. And so there are very specific target customers that are interested in it. So my question becomes, how do you break into even get them to listen to your idea?
That's what he said. It was
Yeah,
so
very
difficult.
difficult as well. Warm intros is basically the short answer. Try to get somebody that knows somebody at the company and make your warm introduction, say, hey, friend XY company, I have a startup here, I think they would be a great fit, why don't you talk? Because at least then you get one quick call with them and then you can pitch it. You try to just cold call them, cold write them on LinkedIn, very, very low success rate. So anything warm introduction works. What I do is I look at the company, so let's say I take a semiconductor company, I go to the LinkedIn page, I go to who works at this company, and I look who has a second connection to me through one of my first connections. And then I go through every employee of this company, I check every connection I have in between, and then I target my first one connections and say, can you make me an intro to this guy? And then I do
It
that.
takes work.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, with 12 potential customers, and it seems like you're sitting on something quite remarkable, it may not take as much work to get to the customer, but the feedback may be much different, much more detailed, much more technical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So again, before you develop your product, make sure you know you're developing the product that the market needs, like we did with the stroke cap, like you're doing, well, certainly what you all are doing is needed by the market. I mean, it's intuitive, but you need to know whether, even if it's intuitive, does somebody really want it? Moving on, I'm not gonna spend too much on these examples. These are wonderful examples. People like BISN was going to use a new method of plugging dead oil wells. The old method was always concrete, and concrete could crack, could shrink. And then the remediation cost for redoing it would be 4 times as much. So they came up with a bismuth-based alloy that would expand to fill the hole that was drilled, that had to be then capped. And they worked with British BP in their North Sea wells at a very, very early on in tests, so that they didn't spend a lot of money. So these are great examples. I won't spend too much time on it. But they were then very successful, and now, we're doing very well. Headquartered both in the UK because of their North Sea oil well work, as well as in Houston. So in product development, remember, create a product roadmap, but expect it to change. It will change. If it doesn't, then you're being too doctrinaire. Or you're Albert Einstein and you figured out the theory of relativity without any help. Prototype early. Get customer feedback, measure, build, learn. Redo. And introduce it to the market long before it's perfect. Not to sell, but to test. Next comes recruiting. I mean, this is pretty, I like to say, hire trust. The cost of betrayal is expensive. Most of the time you try to hire the smartest, the leanest, the strongest. But I think most important is to have somebody you can trust. Can be your partner in the early stages as you grow. There's a lot of pain in growing. Sometimes growth can mask that pain. Yeah.
I always used to say, when you're hiring a chief of staff, is if you're hiring, you have a best friend. If you have a best friend, that's almost always gonna be your candidate.
Yeah.
Your best friend's probably not gonna betray you.
Right.
Long time, so.
And the most difficult thing for entrepreneurs to do, because we tend to be passionate people don't like the fire. We like the like. So hire slow, be careful, but fire fast if you've made a mistake. Because that will come back to haunt you. That's in the recruiting process. As I said, hire trust, attitude, learning ability, not just skill. And align your incentives, which is stock options or co-founder shares, with the objectives. Like in his company, his 4 co-founders all have equal shares, even though he's the CEO. Because they all started the company together. Now, as time goes on, who knows, that might change. but align your incentives with equity. I love Steve Jobs' comment. Doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. This is like the Bill Gates comment from last time about we overestimate 2 years and underestimate 10 years. These are two of my favorite quotes regarding building a startup. So hire the smart people and give them a lot of rope. Then build your MVP. We've talked about that. I think we talked a lot about it, so we don't need to spend more. You was at the MVP stage, you are, right? Others are, you are. You're at the MVP stage?
A little bit past.
Oh, you're past MVP, so you have your final product.
We have a prototype of the next book.
Well, then you're still MVP.
Sure.
Yeah, you're not, you're prototype. Anytime I hear the word prototype, you're not ready yet to launch full-time, right?
Not yet, not
If
yet.
somebody came to you with $1 million check and said, I need a gazillion of those, could you do it?
It'll take 12 months.
Yeah, so you're not there yet, but you're getting close. It would seem you're getting closer than some others. And this is a great example of somebody who used the MVP approach. Well, dog, Wyoming based. I try to use oil and gas examples as much as I can for this audience. They solve the problem for a specific niche and then they expand it. So find your niche, we'll get there. Get the smallest set of features that will interest the market. Well, what you call it, launch fast, learn fast, fix fast. I should have written in there. Feedback is very important. So take the idea to the MVP to final result, which is when then you can go out to the market and start selling. How far are all of you away from to that point? To this, to starting to manufacture? Yes, 1 year,
18 months.
6 months. You said 12 months.
12 months.
Are you sure it's 12 months or is it longer? Remember, in this world, everything takes longer and everything costs more.
18 months.
18 months, that's an honest answer.
24.
You're at MVP, right? Prototype.
About to go in.
2 to 3 years.
And there's an honest man,
Yeah,
because what you're tackling is quite complex.
it is, yeah.
How about you, Samantha?
5 years.
Don't want to sound pessimistic, but I say at least 5 years.
Wow, it's hard to get investors interested if you're that far out. So you may want to retune it, unless you're gonna survive for a long time on grants. But investors 5 years out before you actually get the product, though I take that back, WCB has taken 7 years to get to the product. This is a company I'm also very involved in that's building a robot that can climb the outside of skyscrapers and clean them, non-contact suction based, remarkable technology. But here is a great example where the M in the MVP doesn't apply. It needs to be perfect before we take it up. It can't be on the 65th floor and then fall to the ground. So there are these odd, or if it's pharmaceutical related, or if it's medtech related, where lives are at stake, the M part is difficult. So essentially on manufacturing, particularly if it's real widget that you're building, whether it's a giant widget like his, like Alex's, or it's a small stroke cap, you've got to figure out, do I build it myself? Do I outsource the building, or do I just license it to someone? Those are the three choices faced. And that's sometimes difficult choice you make because you want to control everything. And you have to think about it carefully. So, and this is where advisors can really help. People who know the manufacturing world, or know the licensing. Is this all making sense to you guys? So another example of Waze Energy that decided that before they went out full scale manufacturing, they would do it slowly in steps. And they had drill bits and they ended up, very, very successful in the end. So this will be all, I don't want to spend too much time going through all of these examples. They'll be in the deck. You can, if you're interested, read about it. So for manufacturing, start small. Get the product right, and then figure out, how do I scale? do I get a tool to do injection molding, for instance, versus 3D printing? The plastic cover or whatever the device. Simple, basically self-evident stuff that's up there. Now you're ready. You got your product, done your MVP, you figure out how to build it, you've gotten the customer feedback, you gotta enter the market. This is where you need a different skill set, and by this time you should have recruited someone if your co-founder wasn't intuitively aware. Like in their case, this guy was the marketing guy, so they didn't need to go out and find a marketing guy. But most technical startups don't have that skill. So your best bet is if you can find someone who can come on board as a co-founder who has that skill. Now, you're from the business school, so that's easier. But deep tech folks, that might be a little more difficult. So be aware of the fact that once you're ready to go to market, you need somebody like Alex to be with you to help you take it to market. I want to speed through it because I want Alex to spend some time talking about what happened with his company. But this is the time when your product meets the real world and you get a lot of, this is the terror-inducing moments that happen that I talked about earlier. When the market says, I'm not interested. But you got to keep working through it. And for this, our final lecture will help you a lot, which is soft skills. Create that compelling pitch deck, learn how to communicate it, learn how to communicate it in a charismatic fashion. It's not just selling, because in the early stage, you're actually sometimes making a market. You're convincing people they need something when they don't even know they need it, like your soldiers who you were talking about. This is another example of a company that was very successful. They teamed up with Denver Resources and established oil company. That got them off the start. This is very deep tech oil and gas, something that you all will be familiar with these kind of problems. So focus on a niche, penetrate it, capture it, and then expand and use all the data and feedback you can get. I mean, a lot of this is self-evident, but I put it all in one place so that if you look at it, it'll remind you once you get there 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 12 months from now. Now comes the point. How many of you think, how many of you would define what scaling is?
So it's not growth, as you said, which I'm gonna steal a little bit. But it's the ability to, at the end of the day, if you wanna say go from 1,000 units a month to 10,000, okay? Doesn't necessarily mean that you need to increase everything by 10% or
Bingo.
90%.
Yeah.
Okay, your marketing team may be fine. You don't have to quadruple their size. Okay, your administration or whatever. Odds are probably the folks making your stuff, that's where you're gonna be your biggest growth.
Yeah. The way I qualify it is multiply success without multiplying chaos. Because sometimes when you grow fast, you can grow chaos. Your systems aren't in place, you've got legacy systems, your processes aren't in place. To go from that 100 to 1,000, your financial systems are not in place. You may not have the ability to collect 1,000 invoices a month versus 100 invoices a month, or even generate 1,000 invoices a month. So all of these things are the ones that will contribute to chaos. You have to be ready. So scaling is about being able to grow not just the top line, but also your capacity to handle the top line without having a proportional increase in cost.
When you're talking about chaos, also the thing that I've experienced is, I'm a project manager, and when you have, let's say you increase the size of an organization times 10, the amount of channels that you can get for communication gets insanely out of hand. You've got to be very, very disciplined about controlling intercompany communication. You want to promote it, but you don't want 5,000 radio stations. You want 5.
Growing your, like it say here, growing your customer base, your team, and your operations without breaking it. Because the chaos that originates by doing that. And that's why you need strong processes and strong leadership. You know, here's one of the ways, and we'll talk leadership in one of the later lectures. but I like to define the great leader as one who has the ability to see the gradations of imminent calamity. If it's very small gradation of calamity, you know, you might, but that's a great leader is able to do that. Not to see the opportunity for success, but to see the upcoming gradations of imminent calamity. You're always afraid that something's coming at you that will not, that you didn't plan for, because it will. But a good leader can handle it. Good systems, good processes. That's why I say scaling. When you scale and you scale rapidly, you can really run into trouble. That will come back to haunt you like big bad debt. Then you can't collect from 10% of your customer base. And you get a lot of interest from funding rounds when you start to grow. Angels fund early, but VCs, private equity, strategic investors all like to see growth. So scaling is important. Here's another example of, I'm gonna run through it because I think you're more eager to listen to Alex than to me. But Workrise originally started as a company called RigUp, founded in Austin about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And it was a digital labor marketplace for oil and gas. And they really did a great job scaling, investing heavily in automation. And now, of course, with AI, you can really offload a lot of stuff that you needed clerks and accountants to do in the past. Hello there. No problem. This is your class, not mine. And then once they Workrise, RigUp originally, then they expanded. And finally, Impact, stage 9, is the exit. Now, if you are building good revenues, good bottom line, not revenue, you know, a lot of people say, I'm gonna exit at 2 times revenues or 3 times revenue, you know. Unless it's a very strategic buyer who needs to buy, like somebody in the stroke detection business who needs stroke capital, maybe hopefully we can sell this puppy to them. But that's unlikely if you're not, don't have good customer traction, you're not scaling, and if you're not profitable, or if you do not, if profitability is not imminent. In the end, what are you buying? You're buying an earnings stream. Why would somebody pay $100 million for your company as a charitable donation? So for exit, there's various places you can exit. You could get acquired, you could merge, go public, or you could close. And as I said, the value of death is 9 out of 10. And sometimes that might be the best thing rather than pour good money after bad. So when most people talk about exit, they don't think about closure as being one of the options, which a wise management team and a governance team should be aware of. They say, wait a minute, time to pull the plug on this. Now, hopefully it doesn't happen to any of you in this room, and you all build very successful companies, and you have one of the top 3 options, which is acquisition, merger, or IPO. And it isn't just about the founder, it's about everybody else, including the customers and the employees. So when I talk about, you know, care passionately, remember one of those Ashokisms I said last time? The care is care about your employees, care about your customers, and care about your investors. Those are the 3 main constituencies you really need to care about. Another example of somebody who exited was actually acquired by Shell Tech Ventures. This is another entrepreneurship example. And it's a strong exit example. It shows how a niche technology can become attractive to a super major, where it's solving one special pain point. In their toolkit, this one thing was missing. So you can go back and read it a little bit more. And Venture, founded in Houston, a little over 25 years ago. Very interesting company, acquired by Shell. And so, to exit, build revenues, build systems, build competitive, long-term competitive advantage, build an IP portfolio that's defensible, and build profits. Don't think just a revenue multiple is enough. It might be in some areas, but usually not. And let's just remember the startup life cycle. You have this, what I call nonlinear process. You have the height, peak of inflated expectations when launch. Then you have this huge terror-inducing moment when everything drops. And then if you are successful, you can get to steady state and grow. Here's a very interesting example. I like to sort of put a wrapper on this by talking about the barcode and the barcode scanner. We take it for granted that everything has a barcode on it today, right? When do you think the first barcode was scanned ever? And how many are scanned today?
Juicy fruit was 25 cents, must have been a long time ago.
Well, it was 50 years ago. In the Marsh supermarket in Troy, Ohio. And the cashier's name was Sharon Buchanan. And she scanned a 10-pack of juicy fruit and got that little telltale beep that said relief and proof of success, that a barcode can be successfully scanned. However, the barcode itself was invented 25 years prior, 1949. That's the year I was born, actually. And it went nowhere. So they sold the patent on the barcode. Joe Woodland, the inventor, sold, he was from Rutgers, sold the patent to NCR for $15,000. NCR sat on it, and you have to give them credit that they saw the future in it, till the invention of lasers. Because scanning a barcode till then with big optical machines, you needed to build a machine, you know, the size of this table to be able to scan a juicy fruit, for instance. For a 75-cent piece of gum, you don't want to be spending $1 million to scan. But when lasers came about, they were able to build barcode scanners. And it was in 1973 that NCR perfected the barcode that could be scanned by laser. And in 74, it was finally launched. And today, we read a barcode 5 billion times a year. I mean, a day, every day. Just think about it, right? The idea, Joe Woodland's idea, went nowhere, bought by NCR. Lasers were invented in a completely different area. NCR saw the value, incorporated into scanning the barcode, and now part of our life. It's like this sucker, right? It's become part of our life, which this one didn't exist 20 years ago. Nice little story. So to recap, startup life cycle is, yes,
Robin to Joe.
Joe went into the gospel, the landfill of history, I guess. Well, he took his 15K and probably had a party. He was at Rutgers, and I don't know whether he became, what happened to him after that, but interesting. Why don't you go back and research what happened to Joe? Loop back, pivot, and start over. That's the whole idea, the call to action of the 9 stages of startup life. Stay lean, stay no one to quit. It's not about building a startup.
I know you're very humble about this, but you should listen to one of his podcasts, or correct me if I'm wrong, where you talk about how there are only a few real inventions
Yes.
and how many things fall together.
Oh, yeah, the 6 technologies that change the world, that one? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Watch his, podcast on that. How
6
things come together.
Actually, the whole title is 6 technologies that change the world, and you'll never guess even one of them. That's the title of the podcast. So, starting a business is not just about building a startup, it's solving a problem that the market cannot ignore. And to make investors, customers, and employees happy and profitable. And for scientists and engineers, it's a little more chance of success because you are working on something that hopefully is original invention kind of concept. All of you seem to have that. I'm not smart enough to figure out whether it is original or not, but your PhD advisors will probably figure that out for you. And to me, one of the great examples of going from university idea to startup success is going to be next talk to us. Alex, have the point.
So after the patent was sold, Woodland joined IBM, where he continued working on barcode and UPC developments.
Okay.
That's what ChatGPT tells.
That was very good overview.
Oh, thank you.
In terms of highlighting some of the challenges.
Yeah. Well,
How much
and now
time-
we're gonna drill down into each of these categories, like customer validation. You'll have so much on interviewing techniques, how to break through, as he said, to be able to get to those customers. Or like, you had the luck of being able to talk to all 12 of your potential customers, right?
Yeah.
They've come to you.
How much time do we have, Ashok? Or probably
We have a good 15 minutes. We have,
1:05?
yeah.
Oh, okay. So story time. Which of this is the most interesting to you people? Because I won't get through all the stories for all these 9 different stories.
Start with the PhD research.
Yeah.
How did you
Okay.
come up with the idea?
All right, good. So I'm one of 4 co-founders. I'm the only non-technical founder. So my 3 co-founders have all studied or did their PhD in laser application sciences. So they are the geniuses here. I'm just doing the back office work. And they have, one of them has done something on laser shock peening, the other one has done something on optical tweezers, the other one has created nanoparticles, all with lasers. They always sat together and they always wanted to found a company, but sat together for 2 years, every coffee break, like, we want to found a company. First company they actually created was something where they graved wood. I think they sold exactly 2 products, families, fools, and friends. And then the second was actually what Lightotech is based on. And I remember Alex calling me about
Another Alex.
yeah, exactly. Tech Alex. Yeah. Calling me about 8 years ago. I've known him for ages at school, 25 years. Calls me and I need to tell you something. And he comes to Frankfurt where I used to work at Goldman and he says something about lasers and femtoseconds and nanoparticles and micrometers. Okay. So what do you think? I'm like, something with lasers, right? So my first question, that kind of goes into the next point, validating customers. My first questions were, what's the market size? Who are the customers? Because I didn't understand a single thing about the technology, right? And he didn't have the answer to these questions at the time. But then we started working. He figured out who the customers could be, what the market are. And then he also showed me a picture. And that's basically very naive, but that's basically what got me interested in the technology, because I couldn't understand anything. But the technology can grave the top side of a matchstick without making it burn, right? That's what a laser can do. That's the kind of lasers we use, right? Because you think of lasers like Death Star, and they blow things up, and they can, and they do, but the right type of laser actually can grave anything, cut anything without any heat implication.
Scan barcodes.
Scan barcodes, exactly. But giving you the idea to identify an opportunity, I mean, this was what I identified after hearing who the customers, who the clients are, what the market size is, and then I saw this, I was like, okay, so these things can cut everything. I mean, it's crazy to think about it that way, but sometimes it can be this. So when you say, well, what sparked my idea? It was like a matchstick.
That would go out.
A matchstick that didn't lighten up, you know?
Yeah,
That's what So PhD research is what our technology is based on. And I think that for us, that was basically a big advantage because we know and we know that other companies have tried doing what we do. So what we do is don't just use a laser, but we let a liquid flow run over the surface. Then the laser goes through the surface and cuts everything out while the laser is actually cleaning and cooling the material that we're cutting. Right now we're focusing on microchips, but generally this works for any kind of product. Any kind of product that likes liquids, right? If you want to cut paper, maybe that's not the right page.
It's a size half a million.
Exactly. Like I'll get the example. So where I'm going with this is everybody kind of knew that putting a liquid on a surface cools it and cleans it. I even understand that. I even understood that when Alex told me for the first time. But who of you is a physicist or has some physics background? If, yeah, if you shoot a laser on a material and there is a liquid on top of it, I mean, there is a chemical reaction, probably that's one thing we can get to. I mean, this is basically mini explosions with every little laser shot that you put in there. So the liquid actually makes the whole thing quite complicated. So while it is very straightforward, you need a lot of time and knowledge to actually make it work. And maybe that's the boom, or like the great advantage of having been a PhD research team. They had the time to figure out how it works. Because there was no time pressure, no money pressure, not as much as in a private company or God behold, a listed company that thinks from quarter to quarter. So PhD research can be a great start for your idea because you actually have the time to drill down rabbit hole, maybe even, which 3 guys with a PhD did in this case and figured out how to cut something at speed with no heat implications with this new technology that if it worked, everybody knew it's going to be better than the one without the liquid. And then what we did with validating the customer needs, that's actually also quite a fun story. So when we got the first grants 6 years ago, October 2019, I was basically just an accountant of this company for a grant. When I didn't know anything about technology, we couldn't sell anything yet. We had the grant for 2 years. But what we did is we started talking to different experts in the field to figure out where we can actually use this. We didn't have a problem. We had a solution and we were looking for a problem, which is not really the way you should do it. But sometimes, particularly with PhD, maybe that is a little bit the way how you approach the problem. So we started talking to people who were experts in glass cutting or semiconductor cutting, maybe a few different ones. These are the ones that we focused on the most. And I remember that at some point we talked to an expert in the semiconductor field and we showed him our cuts that we've actually done with the technology. And then we presented it, we showed him the picture, and then we were quiet for a minute and I saw him doing this. You did that? And then I knew this is the right place to go. None of the glass people did that, but the people with the semiconductor field, he was so impressed that some 4 students from a university in Germany he's never heard anything about before could cut the things in a quality that he's never seen before. And that's kind of sometimes where you can really have to take the leap of faith. I mean, we didn't know whether there was somebody paying for it, right? We didn't even know we're going to be competitive on price with everything. We just knew apparently we had a better quality in our cuts than anything this person has seen before. But this is kind of how you approach the validation. And it could have also failed. I mean, the only time we really managed to be fully competitive for industrial purposes, probably less than 2 years ago. And then we started 6 years ago. So, and we already had a funding in between, right? So even investors took the leap of faith. I have to take the leap of faith with this. But 9 out of 10 go bust, and that could happen. You will never know whether you can climb Mount Everest when you're starting at base camp. Tons of stuff can happen, but you have to try.
So what was it in your talk to them that was so convincing that they knew that this would be a good bet? Because
You mean to the investors?
all you had just shown was again,
Yeah.
out of a research lab, and somebody just saying, boy, this is a great one. How did you go from there to getting some real investors to put their money? So what was your experience, and what is it that you think was the moment when it clicked?
Yeah, I remember. I think Ashok showed something with the Valley of Death. Or what was your
Valley of Death.
The Valley of Death. I think that is precisely when you try to find your first angel investors, typically, and the first investor at all, because you don't have any customer traction. In our case, we needed a ton of money because we were a hardware company for a ton of risk with even less traction because it takes so much time to even build this thing. And it took me 15 months or so from the first moment I started looking for investors until we actually had funding round led by Ashok. Maybe 6 months prior, we got our first business angels, and basically these were a group of 4 business angels, 2 out of whom were experts in the semiconductor field, not specifically in dicing, but they knew the semiconductor space. And I pitched in front of them at a competition, and after that they were like, let's talk. So to tell you the truth, you never know where you find the first ones. I went out there and wherever I could pitch for free, I pitched. It's my only job. I couldn't help with the tech, right? That's why also maybe having a business person is good in there, because what should they do? They can't help in tech, so they can focus fully on finding the investors or commercializing it. But really, it's like blasting out what you have, improve after every feedback you get, because you'll get 90 no's before you get the first yes, and then you get 10 yeses in a row. That's kind of how it works.
So is it fair to say, if I just listen to what you just said and then try to draw a conclusion, and I may be wrong.
Yeah.
What you're really saying is there are lots of people whom you need to talk to.
Yeah.
It is somebody for whom this just makes sense because they have an understanding of the challenge and they think that this has got a good solution.
Yeah.
Till you find that the right mix, it's going to be the hunting business.
Yeah, but rather, there's one more layer on that, that when we decided to invest, the rounds that I led, which I did, I talked to 3 of his prospective customers, Intel, Infineon, and Trump. And they all said, because I wasn't gonna write a check till I was convinced that this was, of course there's risk, but this was potentially a success. And all 3 of those giant companies said, if it does what they say it says it's gonna do, we'll buy some.
So that is the critical step.
Yes.
You need to, because investors by themselves may not have the expertise.
Right.
But they are really looking for potential customers to give you some kind of a certificate to say this will work. And that, how you get that is what you have to worry about.
Well, that's their customer validation process that he talked about 10 minutes ago, where they looked at the quality of the cut, because he didn't explain. So now most semiconductor wafers are cut with diamond tip saws, 40-year-old technology. So you may want to expand. And then on a wafer this size, you get 500,000 chips. Can you imagine how tiny they are? And damaging them is, over to you, Alex.
Yeah, yeah, so I mean, Ashok was talking about what the due diligence he's done, but that was for a 5 million round. I mean, you probably, for business angels and investors, didn't do that due diligence. But you start with LOIs from customers, or you invite them over and you show them what you have. I mean, in the end, they invest in a story. Like if it was already something with traction, something with there, we wouldn't need the money. When they start out, you had it, but you basically have to give them a good story that is somewhat believable, even for an expert, because there is something behind it. But you will never be able to, never, maybe yes, but in deep tech, you're never going to be able to sell a full product with customer traction in the millions, growth over the last 2 years. If you're 2 years in after your PhD research and doing something that that takes a lot of time.
So if you look at the time frame that Mr. Rob laid out, would you say you were at a minimum viable product, or you were earlier than that, or you were later than that?
Minimum viable, maybe.
No, much earlier.
Below
Much
minimum
earlier.
viable.
You were not MVP yet.
The B MVP.
They were product development.
The better version.
They were well into product development. Wasn't like it was at the inception stage, but it wasn't MVP. It was, I mean, the product right now sits in a 6x6x6 metal casing. In that, when I first went to see them, it sat in a room half the size of this. Each part was separate, different. And so it wasn't like it had been put into a product. All aspects of what they planned to do, the laser cutting, the fluid washing it, were all being demonstrated in separate sections of the lab. So it was lab prototype. It was not MVP.
So the second question, unless somebody has some, go ahead if you had. and then
So
I'll ask.
I'm curious, so I'm an IT guy generally, like NVIDIA. So it was IBM, NVIDIA, and who was the third one?
No, Infineon, Intel, Infineon, the giant chip maker in Germany,
Yeah, oh, that's right, okay.
Excuse me.
Intel.
Did you face any rejection when I don't know, getting the funding?
All the time.
All the time?
Yeah.
How many do you got before you got the first one?
90. I spoke to 100 investors. I got first 90 no's, and then I got 10 yeses. Literally. Yeah.
You know, the result,
Took me over 8 months to get the first yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
continuing on her question. The reason I'm asking a lot of questions is that's what I get from these guys.
Yeah.
And they're all.
Really great
guys.
questions.
And I don't want to miss the opportunity of having somebody like you or Mr. Rao in the room. This is the time to ask the question.
Yeah, feel free. I mean,
And,
you have.
questions can never be done. We need to ask all this that we don't. So the question is, when you were not even with a minimum viable product, you had lots of ideas, lab experiments and so on, which some of these guys are in. Where did you get the money to really go to the next step? And how do you get the money?
First million was a grant from the state, in connection with the university. And
Million four.
yeah, in dollars probably now with the current exchange rate, million four.
And that was Germany.
That was Germany 6 years ago. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
did you never said you had to go pitch it to a government representative?
Correct. It's basically an institution that is meant to fund particularly PhD research
Right.
to get it out of the university and found a company with it. So you need to show markets.
Yeah, it's a great
Commercialization path,
organization.
yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
Germany is nowhere near as entrepreneurial as the US, because we have VCs and angels here, much more so than Germany. We don't have anything like exist. The state
It's not state.
funding, like, that, which really gives a slingshot
Mhm.
to people like this.
Yeah, it's specifically for PhDs.
When you were talking to, if I recall, Infineon, did you take them to the lab and show them around? Is that, when did you think, like, when do you think their aha was? Oh, wow, did you kind of see it in their eyes? I mean, you said about the guy was a picture, but they're.
Depends. I mean, investors look at different things, and customers look at.
He was
different
asking
things.
about Infineon specifically. When did they get
Just,
the-
how many?
Yeah.
Could be, I mean,
So I won't speak about specific customer names, but generally a client will have the aha moment when they send you material and you cut it for them. So they send you a bunch of chips,
Okay.
you cut it for them, they analyze it, and then they see with their own eyes on their own material that the quality of the cut or whatever they're looking at is better than what they had before.
That's my experience is they give you stuff, you send
Yeah.
back their stuff, and it's better than what they send.
Exactly. That's the aha moment for customers. Yeah.
You've given heroin to heroin addicts.
Yeah. And then you can still be off on certain things, right? So for us, it was, for example, the cutting speed. We're always really good at the quality, but the cutting speed wasn't competitive until later. But it's easier that way than the other way, because like you can do it as slow as you like, and you just send the great quality back, and then they see at least that, and then they start, right? They don't need all of the checkboxes yet, but they need one thing where they can see the potential, and then they can have the rest is a little bit of story and believing that you can do the rest as well.
What made you, after 89 no's, keep going to the 90th one?
I mean, if you don't get the yes, you might as well just, if you don't keep trying, you might as well just quit. I mean, we had maybe money for another 6 months or so I prepare everyone to cut down to 0 salaries if we don't get any money. And you relentlessness, grit. If you don't have that, you're doomed. You need to have, in German we say, a thick skin. You need to have the grit to just keep going and giving basically well, what's the nice word of saying it? A damn about whatever other people say and just think that you're right? You need to have a little bit of hubris. Is that the right word? Yeah. A little bit of hubris on your idea and your product and your team, and just say that the others have no idea what you're talking about. So just say whatever they say, I don't care. Just keep going until you get the yes. And if you struggle for 12 months, still get no yes, you've already done 3 months without a salary, maybe then it's time to admit that maybe it's a no. But until you run out of money and then a little bit beyond, keep going. If you believe in it.
So, Mr. Rao just went through sort of about the different stages in terms of scaling up. And then he gave a lot of very good pointers in terms of, not trying to scale up too fast or be at the right pace and so on. In your, cycle, how did you approach, doing it in a little bit larger scale? Can you share with us your journey on that?
Yeah, so I agree that it's always easier to scale slow, but sometimes it's not possible. I think so. For us, for example, we started out with four founders 6 years ago. Then we hired our first person 2.5 years in. 3 years in, we had the investment from Ashok and the other investors, we were about 7. 4 years in, we were 18. 5 years in, we got our second investment. Now we are 46. 6 months after the investment. So it's kind of like a digital scaling, right? It's very difficult, and you also kind of want to get going, right? So when you have the money, you kind of jump, and then you keep it a little stable, and then you jump again when you get money. So
I know you touched on the manpower,
yeah,
what about the manufacturing itself? Because that's another big chunk.
that is basically not working until it's working. So it's kind of also, I would say,
Like building one machine versus building 100.
Yeah.
Is the challenge. And, you're tackling it as we speak. Because each
Yeah.
machine's about $2.5 million.
Each machine.
yeah. So basically, we're now into the 4th generation of prototype / machining. We started with the first 2 in the brand phase, the 3rd with the first investment, and now the 4th with the second investment. And this is now the one that we believe has industrial scale.
Many people talk about being cash positive. Or else there are cash calls all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So how did yours handle that?
Being cash negative,
No, having enough cash.
Having enough cash?
Because, investors are giving you, go up on that curve,
yeah.
and then you have only money till you generate your own money. So where did that happen?
So we convinced 3 rounds of investors to give us money without having any money.
Any sales.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
have any, revenue.
One other thing that I have to give him and his co-founders credit for, which is what most co-founders don't do, and it will be covered in a future lecture, is you can never raise too much money. Most founders get panicked about dilution. Well, there's 5 million on the table, first time around. They originally came to us and said, we only want to raise 2. And then when we looked at it, it was, if you only raise 2, we'll be having to write a check at a much lower down round. Having that conversation. And then he bought into it, and then he went to his 3 tech co-founders and sold them on it. And same with the second round. So if the money's on the table, you take it as co-founders, as founders. Do not panic about dilution, because as my professor at the London School of Economics used to say, gentlemen, remember one thing, 50% of something is a lot better than 100% of bugger all.
Yeah. Or 1% having 1% of McDonald's is
Yeah.
better than having 100% of
So
the restaurant.
that is the key, and to that I give Alex a lot of credit, that he wasn't so myopic about dilution, or founder dilution. So even though we did have a lot of discussions about that.
Yeah, I mean, what Ashok also said before is you overestimate the next 2 years and you underestimate the next 10, and that's also happens in a different way with your money needs. You kind of think that you're faster in the next 2 years, so you need less money than you think, but actually it's the other way around. You're probably slower, so you need a little more money because you either need to spend more to get up to speed, or you just need more money to last a little longer to get where you needed to go. And my practical advice to finding out how much money you need to raise, I would say, figure out the next digital jump point in your valuation. That could be the real first $200 of revenues from a customer. Just get the first customer. That could be I don't know, the first $1 million in revenues. It could be the first minimum viable product. Whatever, there are certain points where your valuation just jumps and what investors look at, and figure out when that point is. Then add 6 months on top of that, right? Figure out how much money you need in personnel, in costs to last this amount of time. Typically, it's 18 to 24 months, and then multiply that by 1.5. That's about the funding you need. So if you think you'll get it in 18 months. And you need 1.5 million to do that. Well, you raise that to 2 years. That's already 2 million. Raise 3 million, and then kind of works out, because in 2 years' time, things get more expensive. But that's not even the biggest point. You're gonna need things or people that you never thought of, and everything costs money. So Yeah, raise more than you think, for sure.
I know we have just about 20 minutes, so I'd like to, deviate a little bit. Three of these teams have got ideas where, when he said it would take 5 years, you can show in a lab scale. Can probably do a little bit bigger. But being able to show in any kind of a scale, these are chemical processes, you have to demonstrate, there is so much that happens. And getting the kind of money and the capability that you have to build your own equipment and so on, is tough. And then the next tranche of it, it's not in millions, it's in hundreds of millions. The only thing that keeps you going in this is the size of the pie is in billions. So the question is, how do you navigate through this? Especially when all you have is a little bit more than a lab.
Yeah, well. He did it by raising 2 rounds, one for 5 and one for 15 almost. But they had the advantage of having a couple million from the government and a lot of time where there was no money pressure for them to develop the product as PhD students. If you have more imminent need, then the best option is to go into a strategic. Go to a Shell and say, hey, I need 20 million to do this, and you can have a private company, or you can have right of first refusal, or whatever. Might or might not work. Well, one of the investors in this last round is a strategic, who has a right of first refusal for 3 years.
I think you need to figure out if you have any jump valuation points before 5 years, right? So for us, it was getting the first prototype out that the customer would send
The
us a
MVP.
wafer, and then we made 10K of revenues. And then that was already better than any letter of interest we had before.
One of the things I'd like you to spend some time on is the spin out of the technology, because all of them are facing that. And remember my Ashokism, tech transfer is the cork in the ass of progress, and how you've navigated it.
Yeah, so
I just have 2 questions.
yeah, go ahead.
So the first one is, I wanna go back to those 90 no's that you got.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, why were you getting those no's? So you clearly had the technology, maybe the glass people weren't interested, but why were you getting no's from the semiconductor people?
That was no's from investors, basically. That's the 90 no's when I was fundraising.
Okay. So
Different
it wasn't from a customer or
No, that
client
was
side.
the pure fundraising part. So
Okay.
I was trying to get money.
And
from
this is not
investors.
sales, this is investor relations, fundraising.
Okay.
To raise his first 5 million, at that time, he thought he only needed 2.
Different reasons, to be honest. It can be, most of the time I would say it's traction. So somebody was missing some kind of traction, didn't have enough customer validation, this, that. So having the first revenues helps there. But it could also be reasons that you have no control over. Your funding needs are too low, your funding needs are too high. When you start getting both answers, you're kind of getting crazy, right? I don't know, your ticket size is too high, too low. My fund is too big for this, my fund is too low. I want more shares, I would actually want fewer shares than you can give me with this funding round. Like, it could be my fund is already too old, it's too young. I already have a company that does similar things to you in the mechanical engineering part and builds machines for the semiconductor industry. Not a competitor, but can't do that. So we already have that. It could be tons of no's that have nothing to do with you. So you have to figure out the ones that have something to do with you that you can control and get better there. Like if a customer tells you I need more customer traction, try to get those customers in to give you at least $1,000 in payment.
No, but the reason he had to go 90 times before he hit, you gotta find that one zealot who believes. And then that zealot galvanizes a bunch of people. That's why we went to 5 million, because we found that zealot. And that's luck. Took him 90 or 95 to run into the zealot. You may never have run into a zealot, but you keep trying, and you do. Because the basis for that 5 million round was basically conversations with potential customers with no proof, no customer validation, no MVP.
Yeah. Did the customers believe the story? That was basically the question you asked them, sort of.
Yeah. My second question is, in your opinion, in early stage recruiting, what do you think is the ideal team size and how many people do you need from, each?
So, depends, I don't know. And it depends on what you need to achieve, right? It depends where you need to achieve it, like, it depends on your company, depends what you can do, where you have no expertise whatsoever, like.
So in your case, it was just the four of you, as early as product development stage, right?
So, I mean, we maybe had two or three students for 8 hours a week or something. But that, it barely adds up to one additional full-time employee, basically, so for the first 18 or 21 months, it was just 4 of us. Okay, tech transfer licensing. So if you guys have an idea and you wanna get the IP out, like, does the university have a stake on your IP, or how does it work here?
Yes, the university
Yeah.
has a stake on the IP.
Okay,
If it is
so,
generated by a faculty member and students, then the university has a stake.
yeah, and you can buy it off of them, or they keep the stake?
It depends, there are different options available.
Yeah.
And, so you can go all the way, it's quite flexible. It's not very rigid.
Because I get the sense that Rice, U of H, UT, they're all pretty tough to deal with for tech transfer, unlike an MIT or a Stanford, who understand the whole process of, even the university that they spun this technology out, they were fantastic, better than certainly Rice, which I know very well.
The difference in this one is, is it very traditional and they've been having little success, and those who are really wanting to grow this side. So 4 years ago, Ramanan was the chancellor, vice chancellor for research. We just took that job for 1 year. That time he made a lot of changes in terms of technology. Now, technology transfer is under him. Okay, one of the assistant vice presidents for technology transfer works for him. So we are trying to make it as friendly as possible. And there are different options. Many times they will just say, I'll give you this. The moment you start up, how are you going to start paying me every year? And the guy hasn't even generated any revenue. It's a totally ridiculous to be asking.
Typically, it's royalty based or a one-time buyout.
Yeah.
I think in terms of founder friendliness, the best thing would be, and I would always advocate for that from a founder perspective. Nobody should have a share in the company if they're not contributing to the future. If the university has a share in the company because because you created the IP while you were at university, it's not gonna look great for the next funding rounds because it's debt equity. No, like it means that everybody else will get less, particularly the founders. And in the end, if the founder has too little share, he's not gonna be as motivated, or she, anymore. So I would always vote for some kind of payment structure that the university gets money back if the company makes revenues.
That's what we have. One of the options is,
Should not be shares, and also the
unless you
professor
get
should
some
not get
revenue
shares.
point,
in the company.
you don't need to pay a cent.
That's great.
Yeah, that's how it should
So
be.
we're not flexible, lots of, options are available.
Because investors are okay with it, so you don't pay anything unless you make revenues, fine, so it's just like a little cutoff, and then good. But if it's debt equity, investors hate that. Same for professors, don't give your professor a dime of your company in shares if they do not contribute to the future. Be hard on that, like, who's gonna stop you from creating the company without this person on your cap table? Nobody.
Unless the professor is making a real substantial contribution.
Exactly, for the future, yeah.
What about if the technology is from NASA? Because actually that's how we got when we were in the program,
Mhm.
but it's from NASA, not UH, so. In this case, it's just like.
And what's the structure of the licensing agreement? Is it royalties? Is it upfront? Is it equity?
I mean, it is actually after we acquire the testing and validation process that we can get the whole license just for us, but also we have to give a certain percentage of royalty to NASA.
That's okay, as long as the royalty is reasonable,
So what is the number reasonable for you to assume?
under 5%.
Under 5.
You need help negotiating, call me.
How much royalty do you take for that?
Zero. Zero.
Yes,
As long as he gets to sit in the spacecraft.
Well, that I can do without their help, trust me.
The biggest story here is basically the past is almost irrelevant from the current perspective, right? Whatever point in time it is, the past is irrelevant to the success of your company. It's always the future. So even if like somebody contributed a ton in the past, they're not going to contribute in the future. That's why you have things like vesting, right? Everybody should get a share in the company as long as they contribute, but the next 2 years are always going to be more difficult than the last 2 years. So the ones that do the next 2 years should, should work for something that they benefit from. It's why nobody should get anything if they don't do anything in the future, just because they were there in the past. Why should the university get 10% in your company? In equity capital, And sometimes it's hard decisions, hard negotiations. Sometimes you have to also do it, because otherwise it doesn't work. So again, 50 shades of gray. But it's very important, I think, to understand that the future is like 99% of the success in the company is execution. It's not the idea, it's execution. And it's always, the next 2 years are always more difficult than the last.
One last point I think you need to talk about is managing multiple co-founders. We're gonna have a big section on 5 lectures from now, but he did it, so it'd be good to hear your experience on, you had 4 co-founders and how do you manage it?
So who is a single founder here in this group? Nobody. Who? You?
So technically, yeah.
Yeah, definitely have to find another one because investors don't like single founder companies. I don't know how they invested in Facebook, but my experience from talking to early investors, they don't like single.
No, at the time there were 3, you remember?
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, then there you go.
The other 2.
So yeah, but it's always good to have at least 2 because one is it's too much risk on one person. If you go, the company's bust, so investors don't like that. Who is in a group of 2? Any business founder in there or just tech? 6. And then you get a third one. Yeah. Both business, but you don't do anything techy, or you need a tech lead.
Our inventor is the technical person.
And he's not a co-founder?
No.
Get him out.
Interesting, okay. Yeah, and who was the 3 or more?
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, how many?
We're 4.
4?
Four.
4? Yeah. So I've seen groups of 3 already splitting up at some point. So the likelihood of a group of 3 or 4 splitting up, I don't know what the percentage is. Let's say it's at least 50. So make sure when you do the contracts that you account for it. I mean, you make contracts in good times for bad times. We started with 4, we're still 4. So it's probably rather on the lower expectation side, but it can happen, right? So make sure that you make sure that the company works after it. It could be you that goes out, can't know, but make sure that you have procedures in that, so that the company doesn't die. Because even if somebody goes out or you go out, you're gonna have a share in the company. So you want that the company continues, but you don't want to talk about it when one of the people wants to get out, because then it might get ugly. Make sure you make the rules before that, and then it's fair and square. Because startup years are like dog years. Not because you grow older 7 years in 1 year, but because things happen at a 7 times higher pace than anywhere else. So you're 2 years in, it's like being 14 years in at a super big company. I mean, if you start a new job, you think you're gonna stay there for 14 years? I don't think so. And that's 2 years in a startup. So think about the long term when you create these commitments. Make sure that you have the same vision from the start, right? So I've seen other startups split up because one didn't want to have any VC investors, and the other one was gonna make this unicorn in 5 years. And the other one said, I'd rather stay low, just work with the research at universities, get my salary, and be okay with that. And the other one was gonna make it a unicorn. I mean, this is not gonna work, right? And this is a very important view. If you guys looking for a business founder, these guys are gonna go, I want to make this a unicorn at any time, right? Typically. If you don't want to do that, find one that doesn't want to do it. Or you have to also want it, right? But figure out these tough questions, because you need to think like you're gonna marry this person. Co-founders like
We're gonna have a full half session on co-founder equity splits, alignment of incentives later on, but it's better you hear from a real world person who did it.
Yeah, and also when you now find a business person, it's not important that you had the ideas. It's important, right? Because how you could do it, but going forward, like fact that you had the idea, it's not gonna make this company successful. It's how you work as a group and what you contribute to the future. So clearly I'm biased because I'm the business guy who got into a group of people who had the idea. But I would vouch for you to treat this person as an equal founder, because if they're not good, you can still, things can still happen, right? Just because you say we're equally equal, it doesn't mean that you have to stay equal for the whole time in terms of shares either, or that you're gonna continue for the whole time. But if you think that they're important and contributing the same as you, don't bog down on the fact that you had the idea, I would say, because I've seen other groups where the business person comes in, gets lower share than the others. This person has been on the phone with me every 6 months saying, I think I contribute more or at least equal to the, it's just gonna create troubles. Unless, there is a really good reason that you all agree to, but then tell them in the face, I think you're worth less than me. But if you think that they're worth as much as you, then treat them as equal people.
Time for one last question, then we need to start wrapping up. Homework assignments.
I have one, going, yes.
So I'm under the impression that Hydrotech is a perfect sophisticated combination of hardware and software expertise, probably something that we see in computerized numeric control machines. If the answer is yes, did you guys have the combination of these two expertise back when you were pitching?
You mean hardware and
Or-
software?
Yes,
Yeah.
and how you perfected that, by outsourcing or by learning the passenger drawing?
We were fortunate enough to have all the expertise in the house that we needed. So although all of them have done their PhD in the same field, one is a physicist, so has a completely different background to the other two. The others were mechanical engineers on paper, but one of them has done actually a full bachelor in software programming as well. So then took over more this side, the other one took over more the mechanical side, and the physicist took over the process side. So although it looks on paper they were had the similar studies, they had totally different fields, and that covered the technology side really, really well. And then for everything you don't have, at the start it's going to be tough to outsource, but for example, things like tax or legal stuff, I outsourced immediately because I'm not an expert in it, right? So I don't know, it's going to be tougher to probably outsource technological development in mechanical engineering if you need it, because it's going to be really expensive. But sometimes you have to outsource.
The hand.
Yeah. Question I'll ask Ashok, and maybe you need an answer or not. Remember we talked about power supply and pulsating power supply. Is that a critical component for you guys in the laser business? Having very high voltage for a very short period of time. Is that important?
So I cannot say yes or no because of two reasons. First, I'm the business guy, so I don't really understand what this is all about. But secondly, I know that for us it's probably not important because we already buy the lasers off the shelf for us. So maybe my CTO would say something else because he could imagine like a super crazy combination. But then I would have to ask him. I really don't know.
But maybe for you, we
Yeah,
can,
we can-
there is
we
a
can-
connection.
we can get in that.
Inventions is on that.
Power supply, I guess the one pager.
Some laser supplier would be the first target I would go on. I would speak to the likes of one for Europe and these kind of laser producers.
So last lecture's assignment, please, whoever's done them, send them, did we do it? We had an assignment, homework assignment, 1 page on your homework. You did it. Could you share it with everybody?
Sure.
So that then nobody else did it.
It's the first time I'm here, so,
Yeah. But you were here.
yeah, I thought I will get an email, but I didn't get.
Sorry?
Yeah, here is one suggestion on that. From now on, it's already on campus.
Okay,
You've all been given an invitation to campus. Many of you have not signed in. You need to sign in into campus.
but we will get a email to sign in, right?
Yes, you have got it from Meme.
I didn't get an email. so-
We'll make sure, we'll send it again. When you get it, before into campus, all of this is already loaded in.
Okay.
And then if you would do it, it will help because electronically, they can see it ahead of the next class.
Oh, great.
And that helps. Even for the first.
I would love to have read your responses before coming in today. And this is not, these are not for me being a hard ass. This is simply for you to all, assimilate. You've sat here, listened to a very successful CEO, you've taken in a lot of data, a lot of information, sort of puts it all into one place, helps you sort of regurgitate it. You don't have to do it because you're not getting a grade on it, but I think it would help you if you did this. I mean, I will take the trouble of reading everything if you take the trouble of doing one thing. Okay, so this is what I suggest that you come up here. Now, a lot of what we talked about today was ideation, so here's two preliminary ideas, one related to your own venture so that I can get, these are one pagers, double spaced, because I have old eyes. And therefore you can keep it crisp. And here are the four things, what's the problem, where's the problem, why is it important to solve? And what's your initial idea of the solution? And if you can also add into it customer validation like you've gotten, that would be a fifth point. Okay, all willing to do it this time? We still got 10 days because the next lecture is not till a week from Saturday. And I promise you, I will read them all. And here's a reading list of things that I think are very useful. Steve Blank, Why the Lean Startup Changes Everything, from Harvard Business Review. I have a PDF of their first chapter, like I shared last time with you, Scott. And so these are just suggested reading, and there's some, podcasts that, why isn't this one coming up? The podcast that I really like is the one that Reid Hoffman does. Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, he does a podcast, and the ones that took Airbnb, if you have time, just listen to that one because he actually interviews the two founders, and it's wonderful. It's three really super achievers having a conversation. And even if you don't intend to go anywhere in that direction, I think it's very illuminating. The other one I like that Reid Hoffman does is the one he did on the company Stripe. But if you only have time for one, do the one that he does with the Airbnb co-founders. Really nice.